Welcome everyone to one of our last meetings of the semester, actually. We've got a few more to go, so let's stick with it, ride it out to the end. My name is Michael Cerisi. Let's get in and kick this meeting off. If you have not already, please feel free to sign in on our sign-in form. This helps track attendance for things like voting and running as an officer, which are both very timely things as they're currently happening right now. And we'll talk more about that on a future slide. So do keep that in mind. We do have a few ways you can kind of keep informed with us. One of our preferred ways is to join our Discord. You can do that by visiting hackucf.org/discord or scanning that very fancy RGB QR code you see on screen. That's where all of our members hang out. That's where we hang out, and you can ask questions and get announcements for our meetings that happen every week. We also have a mailing list if you prefer to get those emailed to you in a nice little readable format prepared by Jeffrey, oh so nicely. In there is information about any competitions happening, our Friday meeting topics, and any upcoming events that we have outside of those general things. Our shop is relatively new here. The past year or so we've had it. You can buy some of our merchandise. You can buy masks with our HackUCF branding on them in a few different colors, and some of our t-shirts as well as like mugs and pins and other miscellaneous items like that. And if you're interested, you can follow us on our Twitter, where we post some of our meeting topics, social media posts, and retweet some of our sister organizations, any conferences that happen in the area, competitions, stuff like that. So today's topics, we're going to go over some announcements real quick, and then we're going to talk a little bit about nominations that are once again happening now. The tool time is going to be brought to us by Jeffrey on classic crypto, and then I'm going to lead us into current events. And then the main talk today is going to be brought to us by Trimble. It's going to be an overview of physical security. And then after that, we're going to close this out. So before any of that, we want to talk to you about our operations team. These are a group of volunteers who help run the club, and it's open to anyone to join in those meetings. You can show up on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. and you're welcome to help pitch ideas, plan future meetings, workshop ideas. It is going to be more toned down since we are closer to the end of the semester, but you can help us plan ideas for next semester and get that in the pipeline if you're interested in doing so. That's going to be hosted on Zoom, and the announcements for that will be posted in our Discord channel, in the announcements channel, every Tuesday. So if you're interested, please feel free to stop on by. So a few announcements today. We got some t-shirts that have been around for a while, and then we're going to kind of go over some results of CTFs and future competitions coming up real soon. And then we're going to talk about some of the officer positions that are available for nomination, and then push CPC tryouts once more. So the t-shirts that are available on the shop, there's a page on the shop.hackucf.org for the feature designs, I believe it's called. And there you can see one of the 3 designs you can purchase from. These 3 designs were designed by members of our club who decided to submit these for us to put on our store. The center design, the virtual campus that won by popular vote, was highlighted here, but all 3 are available online. If you did pay dues, that is $10 to become a member, you do get a coupon code on these t-shirts, or on one of them, for $10 off. So it seems like a pretty good deal. Any CTFs that are coming up and you feel like you want some practice before then, or you may not feel confident enough to compete in those, and you want to have some experience before that, you're more than welcome to try our ctf.hackucf.org. That is a CTFD environment hosted by us on our infrastructure, and it's completely open 24/7. There's even a channel in the Discord where we can discuss that with other members and practice with that without any stakes of an actual competition. You're welcome to do that solo as well, on demand, whenever you feel like. If you're interested in competitions, however, and you want to find out all the competitions that are available, but don't necessarily want to hear it from us, or we don't push all of them, you're welcome to visit ctftime.org and view the full list of CTFs happening at any given time. There's going to be things there like single events or group events, so you can work with your friends and compete in a competition and get some experience that way. So there was a CTF competition on March 24th, which was like 2 days ago. And we actually had a team compete in that, and they got second place. This was our first time actually using the TryHackMe CTF platform, which is what the Maryland Cyber Challenge did. And it's our first time competing in this actual competition style. And with all of that, we still placed second, which is pretty great. We completed 86 out of the 100 challenges. And I think we were just a few points short of first place. So it was a tight race, and we put up a good competition, and they did as well. And congratulations to the team that competed in that, and the names are on screen. So coming up, we also have one more competition for our CCDC team, and a quick shout out to them. This weekend, the team will win the at-large regional competition and will proceed on to nationals. The following competitors there will also be competing in that competition. That's going to be like a Saturday and Sunday, basically all-day event. So more screen time for us locked away in the room. So wish them best of luck. More competition stuff, right? So that was CCDC, blue team. If you're interested in CPTC, which is the red team, which is offensive security, hacking, report writing on the vulnerabilities that you find. If that sounds interesting to you and you want to find more information, please drop by our CPTC channel in our Discord, and we would love to answer any of the questions you have. The submission requirements for that is going to be one easy hack the box write-up and one medium hack the box write-up. Those must be active machines. The retired ones are all over the internet and quite easy to find answers for, so we do ask that they are active. The final selection of the team will be a total of 8 people. However, that may kind of change if you're able to shadow and things like that. So don't let that number discourage you from trying out. However, it is nice to have on a resume to be such part of a small group of people that actually get to compete, and there's still plenty of spots open. So do submit these if you're interested. It's a great opportunity to grow your skills and really network in the industry. Companies like if you can compete in competitions, and they like you even more if you can win those competitions. So the submissions for that is going to be due April 18th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please send those submissions to the email, the submissions@hackychef.org. If you have any questions, again, drop by our CPDC channel. And the bit.ly link on screen is actually an interest form where we collect a few things like your major, your resume, and stuff like that, so that the coach can collect that information for UCF. So the nominations that are happening currently, we've got a few roles. We'll talk over them briefly. Maybe one of them will speak up on their current role. But this is happening right now, and there's a slide at the end on how to run for these. So if you're not aware, I'm the current president, and we do have an officer position open for all of them. So the presidency, as you see here, these are all things taken from the Constitution. So basically what I do from day to day is going to be running the meetings twice a week. That is the ops and general body meeting. Some other miscellaneous things that I do is I also edit and upload the YouTube videos to our YouTube channel. That takes like a day or two, nothing super crazy. Basically, my job is to coordinate the activities of the organization, be aware of all that's happening. Sometimes a lot of paperwork, sometimes a lot of meetings. I have like monthly or bi-monthly meetings with UCF and like Lockheed Martin for the Cyber Lab and stuff like that. So it's a lot of just business end stuff. Sometimes I get to host a meeting or a workshop, but it's kind of what it is. So you're welcome to read all this in context at the Constitution, which is available online at hackychef.org/constitution. Onto the vice president role. I don't think he's here currently to kind of speak on his role, but what the vice president does is basically, as the name implies, assist the president in things that they're unable to get to. They also coordinate all conferences, which is totally happening during the pandemic, so that may kind of reduced in priority now. Record meetings in the secretary's absence, stuff like that, financial transactions, basically like the president, but like extra stuff outside of that the president really can't get to. The vice president also does help plan these meetings, reaching out to companies and contacts and getting people interested in speaking at UCF and helping promote the club that way. The treasurer manages all the money and a lot of documents and money and stuff like that. They manage the PayPal, they help collect dues, process active student membership, they sign financial documents, stuff like that. Does Addison have anything to say in chat or by voice on anything interesting about the treasurer that would convince someone to run if they were on the fence about it? Nothing interesting. Well, that's unfortunate. Well, if you want to be part of the club and help kind of shape the future of that, you can become a treasurer and run on the as an officer and kind of help shape where the club goes and make decisions at that level. You do get a shiny key. So if you like keys, if you like shiny things, and especially if you like shiny keys, it is a bonus for becoming treasurer. And last but not least, we do have the secretary position. That's currently Jeffrey, who sends you all the emails in the mailing list, drops the announcements in Discord of the super helpful notifications to let you know when we have these meetings, any workshops, things of that nature. He also does keep minutes of the meetings, which helps us reference the meetings in case we forget what happened or for some reason can't attend. He also helps prepare ballots and a little bit more documentation stuff on that. Jeffrey, do you have anything super fancy to say for a secretary that helps convince people to run?
Nothing much. As you said, that I pretty much make sure you know what's going on in the club, and people who don't go to the meetings, I try to make sure they know what's going on in the club. I take notes. I send out things on social, email, Discord, you name it, and kind of manage all that. And I occasionally go to some of the meetings that Troisi goes to, notably the one with the Electronic Frontier Alliance. So I'm pretty much the social guy slash the note-taking guy. If that's interesting, this might be the position for you.
All right, thank you. So if any of that interests you and you would like to nominate yourself or someone else as officer, here's kind of the steps to really do that. Nominations are being accepted starting April 6th, which was, that's not correct. Starting now, okay, my bad. They're starting now until April 6th. So they were open like a week or two ago, and we're accepting nominations until April 6th. I'm sorry about that. The election day will be hosted on April 9th. So April 6th is the Tuesday before the Friday, that is the 9th. You can nominate yourself or someone else by sending an email to execs@hackucf.org. In that email, please do include your full name, the position you're applying for, your UCF ID, your Discord handle, and your Knight's email. With all of that, we can put you down as a potential candidate, pass it off to our advisor, who can then validate your credibility with UCF, that credibility being no academic probation, a certain GPA. And once all of that is confirmed, you will then officially be in the running for that position. Additionally, you must also have attended 50% of our membership meetings in the semester, both in this semester and in the previous semester, and be a dues paying member. You should know if you've done all of that. It's especially helpful for us to track that if you are filling in the sign-in form and or signing into Zoom with your Knight's email. Both of those help track. And if you meet all of these requirements, you will be notified of that probably a few days before April 9th, depending on how late in the process you nominate. If you are interested in doing so, you are encouraged to read the Constitution at hackucf.org/constitution. Please don't rely on just the information we're saying here. If you're going to run for the role, it's nice to be familiar with the complete obligations of that position. So now on to current events, and I'm going to pass it off to myself. So quick current events today. So first up, BackBlaze. They accidentally share your backup file metadata with Facebook. And if you're not familiar with who BackBlaze is, they're an online backup platform where you can kind of securely upload your files and keep them for safekeeping, right? So part of the secure backup process is that 3-2-1 strategy. 3 copies of the data, 2 of them on different mediums. That could be tape, SSD, hard drives, things like that. And then 1 offsite location. So BackBlaze makes it really easy to get that 1 offsite location. If you're a small company or an individual, you don't have multiple offices and ease of access to multiple locations. So that's why these cloud services really exist. So BackBlaze storing their customers' online data. They have a function where you can log into their website and view those backed up files online and really get the management plane for all of that. However, from March 8th to the 21st, they did a campaign for advertising on one of their pages that basically tracks users that when they visit that page, so they know if their advertising campaign is successful. That's kind of standard. A lot of people do that. Nothing new there. However, the implementation of that was kind of the issue. The Facebook advertising pixel that they use to track that access to that advertisement page was accidentally implemented across their entire online platform, including pages that were behind login pages. So when you logged in and browsed your backups, they also had that Facebook tracking pixel there. A user on Twitter actually noticed this and tweeted them asking like, hey, why is Facebook getting my metadata for these files, BackBlaze? What's going on with that? So the things that were sent to Facebook contained only their metadata. So that being the file name and the size of the file. There was no personal information sent to Facebook, but there still is a small scale information leakage that definitely should not have happened. Luckily, only 9,245 users were affected. But it's still one of those things that definitely should not have happened, and something to be aware of when using online services. Things like third-party validation and third-party tools sometimes get access to information on that service that they shouldn't. That's a common occurrence. Sometimes it's much worse where they get full access to like the database of the platform. However, luckily here, that was not the case. And second, Purple Fox gets an update. So if you've not heard of this malware kit before, this was actually discovered back in 2018. And it was an exploit kit that found a vulnerability in Internet Explorer and downloaded a payload to your machine and established persistence. Hopefully no one's still vulnerable to that because we are no longer using Internet Explorer. However, the malware still persisted. It did get an update to add worm functionality. If you're not familiar, a worm is a self-replicating software that once installed will try to replicate itself to other machines and kind of repeat that process. So from one machine, it spreads to two, then from two to four, and on and on. And it tries to infect as many machines as it can, effectively forming one big botnet for an attacker to control. The worm installs itself as a rootkit on your machine, which is a very low-level persistent method to persist across reboots and really get into your system, and it can be sometimes very difficult to remove. The rootkit that it uses, it mimics a system DLL to kind of masquerade itself as a Windows system process. So the average user looking at the machine may not recognize that as malicious activity. They may see something like svc host.dll and think nothing of it. Upon the installation of the payload, it reboots your machine to get that rootkit finalized and installed. And then it scans the internet for SMB and brute forces logins to authenticate. Once it is able to get into SMB, it can then run commands, install software on your machine, and just like the initial method, install a rootkit and repeat. So basically, don't expose your SMB to the internet. You should not be doing that anyway, but some people are, unfortunately. I don't know why, but please don't. SMB is the Windows file sharing on Windows computers. It is very unsecure, not to be used over the internet. So definitely firewall that off. If your workplace does that, talk to someone about it. So now I'm going to pass it off to Jeffrey for the tool time. So Jeffrey, take it away.
Awesome, thank you. So next slide. So today we're going to be talking about symmetric cryptography. But first, what is symmetric cryptography? It's cryptography that's symmetrical. Shocker. Which this is a fancy way of saying that the same key is used both to encrypt and decrypt a message. This is also called symmetric key encryption and has similar names. Symmetric is preferred for high-speed connections, while asymmetric crypto, while more secure since both the sender and the receiver have different keys, is computationally expensive. So in the real world, we actually use a mix of both. We use more asymmetric stuff to transmit like one-time like keys and stuff, while we'll use symmetric encryption for all that real-time data. Of course, cryptography has a lot of math behind it. Don't think cyber is your escape from math. It is not. Math is everywhere. But thankfully, the ciphers today we'll be focusing on just require some basic arithmetic. Next slide. So some common or basic ciphers include the A1Z26 cipher, which turns letters into numbers, the Caesar or shift cipher, which shifts the alphabet X characters over, usually 3. The Vigenère cipher sums each letter by repeating key, while its sibling, the one-time pad, has a non-repeating key. Railfence and commular disposition ciphers are transposition ciphers, meaning that A, they're pretty much anagrams, and B, you're physically rearranging the letters. We'll go more in depth in that in a bit. And then we have Playfair and Hill ciphers, which are both matrix-based, one which uses like a bigram substitution technique, which we will very briefly touch on, while Hill uses matrix multiplication. So what are each of these different ciphers actually look like? And also note, this is not a comprehensive list. There are many ciphers, and if you're a CS student, you're going to cover this in CIS 3360. So next slide. So first, A1Z26. This is the cipher that converts a letter into a number. Yes. Ah. So yeah. So this cipher will use a letter to number technique that will be crucial for some of the later ciphers, although they'll end up doing it zero index. So when you see it in like Visioneer, it'll be a 0Z25. So this is a basic cipher that kind of highlights a fundamental property that when we turn letters into numbers, we can do some math. So next slide. Next, we'll be talking about the Caesar cipher. This just lets us shift the whole alphabet a certain amount of letters over. Traditionally, this is 3 letters, but we can really shift it however we please in practice, as long as both the sender and receiver have the same instructions to encrypt and decrypt it, which are inverse processes here. To decrypt in an encrypted string using Caesar, you just take the letter, add 3 to it, and then that's your ciphertext. Subtract 3, you get your plain text back. So next slide. So Visioneer adds a bit of variability to the shifting behavior in the Caesar cipher and combines it with some of that turn the letter into number idea that we saw in A1Z26. So this uses a separate string, which will be our key, to dictate the shifting behavior. So traditionally, the Visioneer cipher is displayed in a table, but this variable shifting can be done pretty simply by just adding the numerical value of the plain text word's letters and the numerical value of the key's letters to get our new word. As seen in this example, B plus H equals I, and then E plus I equals M, and then we repeat the key until our plain text is converted to ciphertext. But what if we sum these together and get a answer that's above 26? Because, well, there's only 26 letters. We can use modulus to fix that. So that way we get the remainder of a division by 26 and we'll get our actual letter. So using this idea of kind of summing the key, we can have more advanced keys that aren't just shifted over by 3 characters. Next slide. And the last one I'm going to talk about in depth today is the rail cipher. This is where we physically rearrange the letters in this zigzaggy pattern and read it back left to right, top down. So we pretty much are taking the letters, putting them on a table, and physically rearranging them and using the position that we place them in to read them back differently. And we'll use the same process to decrypt it. But one thing about the rail fence cipher is that, like other transposition ciphers, it creates an anagram. So you can just take the letters in the ciphertext and get a rough idea what it was trying to say without doing anything too fancy, just some basic anagram maths. Next slide. Of course, there are a lot more ciphers than that. We have stuff like the binary one-time pad, which is like the alluded to one-time pad that I talked about when covering Visioneer, but it uses XORs because XORs are pretty much our best friend in cryptography. Then we have columnar, which is another transposition cipher that you write the word as in a grid in like different rows and then read it back by rearranging the columns and get your ciphertext that way. And then you have Hill and Playfair cipher. The Hill cipher uses matrix multiplication, while the Playfair cipher, you're just taking 2 points and kind of doing a little shift, which you can kind of get the idea with the diagram on screen. And of course, these aren't hard and fast rules. As long as both sides have the same algorithm, you can get creative, maybe mix a few algorithms together. It's up to you and the receiver. Now, CIS 3360 is security and computing. So next slide. Now, consider the following. Now, if you look at these, they're not exactly super strong algorithms. Like, you wouldn't put your top secret government secrets in a Caesar cipher. However, over time, these more basic ciphers were built on repeatedly, creating stuff like DES, which then would later come on to be a bigger cipher like triple DES. And over time, these basic building blocks build up to more modern ciphers that support modern communications today, whether it's on the internet or otherwise. So next. Now, it's demo time. So we're gonna be playing around with these in a little cipher gauntlet. I highly recommend that if you have a writing utensil and a place to write, just get it out if you want to kind of follow along, because I'm gonna try to also get some audience interaction. So let me open everyone's favorite drawing tool, Microsoft Paint, and I'll then hand it back to Michael. Okay, share screen. There we go. Microsoft Paint. So now, before we start, I do want to ask you, the audience, something. If I can get chat pulled up. Um, wow. Yeah. Okay, let me go to chat. There we go. So I want you guys to say, what word do you think I should try kind of play around with? What's going to be our plain text message? It could be a single word. It can be a short phrase. Just say something in chat. Hack the planet. I'm going with that. So I could do Egos, but I want to go overkill today. So I'm going to write down screen. So we got hack the planet written on screen. Now I'm going to convert these into numerical form. I'm not going to use exactly A1 Z26. I'm just going to do 0 index. So here A is going to be 0, C is going to be 2. Then I just have to kind of slowly go through these. E is 4, F, G, H, 7. We have another 4 here. 15. And then I'm just QRST. So 19 for these T's. I forgot the H's. So D, E, F, G, H. 2 plus 5 is 7. Then H, I, J, K, L, M, N. 19 plus 6. No, I did some bad math there. No, I did. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I don't know how that's possible, but I am using a stylus, so that might be cheating. Wait. I'm just making sure I get this down right. H, I, J, K, L, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. Then 7, 8, 9, 10. Does this look right? I think actually this is wrong. H, I, J, K. No, it's not. Yeah, honestly, the hard part is just getting all this written down. I should have. Yeah, you're correct about that, Daniel. So I'm actually just gonna say that let's just pretend this is the correct um, numerical representation, because I don't want to leave you guys just sitting there in the dark. So once we convert it into numbers, we can then, I'm actually gonna, from here, I'm actually just gonna grab Ego. So brushes. So we'll use this as the key for our Visioneer cipher. Now, if we want to do a Caesar cipher, then we just kind of shift each letter 3 over. H, I, J, K. I'll do this in green. A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F. We're just doing a 3 shift. K, L, M, N, T, U, V, W, H, I, J, K, E, F, G, H, P, Q, R, S, L, M, N, O, A, B, C, D, A, wow, A, B, C, D, N, O, P, Q, F, G, another H, and then another W. So now we shifted this 3 over to get this green text. And now for this, we'll go ahead and write down the numerical value. And we'll see that, except for the ones that I messed up on above, that it's just going to be the number above plus 3. So let's do that quickly. So D is 3. I'm going to do this. B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. 10 is K. B, C, D, E, F. F is 5. 10, 13. B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. This is 22. This is 10. This is 7. Yeah, you can kind of see now I'm just kind of converting slowly but surely each of them. We know this is we know that is D. We know W already is 22. H we know is 7. Q is okay. Okay, do we know O? Okay, S. Okay. K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S. That is K plus 8, which is 18. I, J, K, L, M, N. This should be 14. And then this should be 16. G should be 6. Thank you. Yeah, nice eye. You know, doing math on stream is not easy. So now we have here just a series of numbers. Now, what can we do with these numbers? Now, if we want to apply a Visioneer cipher with our key ego, which I believe Larry mentioned, so I'm now going to write that down and then repeat it because it's only 4 characters. We need it to fit all of it. So now from here, we'll get our trusty dusty calculator because I'm not going to mess up this on live. And then we'll write this 4, 6, 6, 14, 4, 14, 4, 14, 4, and then a bunch of 6s, and then we just do some addition. So doing that, we'll get 10 plus 4 is 14, then we get 9, and then we get 11, then we get 13 plus 14 is 27, 22, 26, which if we mod by 26 will be 1, this will be 2. The E, F, G, H, yes, you are correct. Because we're adding 3, and that would be the Caesar cipher. Okay, so now 16 here, 12 here, 18 plus 14 is 32. Mod 26 should get us 6. 14, this is 18. 9, 22, 14 plus 7 is 21. And then we get 26, which is 1. So now we can take these numbers that we got from summing the key repetitively and turn them back into letters, and we should get our, in this case, will be our final message. So now we know, actually, this is 14. So now we can continue. So we can kind of go here. 9 is going to be, I want to say 9. Okay, 1 sec. I'm going to turn my computer back on. So this will be J. Then 11 will be, if we look, I believe it's L. 2 is C. 1 is B. And then we know as a result that's B. This is also B. W. 9 is J. 18 is S. 6. Yeah, the first number was 14. I am just didn't write it down. This is M. And then R. So now, after all that math, by doing the first the Caesar cipher and then the Vingeneer, then we get this super long string that if we use this backwards and then the Caesar cipher backwards, will get us back to hack the planet, give or take, assuming that we did all the math correct. Now, if we wanted to kind of demonstrate the railfence cipher, then we would do something using 3 rails like O, J, L, C, B, R, M, G, S, J, W, B, B, and then we just read it back. And I'll do this in brown, kind of going this way. And then we get O, B, S, B, J, C, R, G, J, B, L, M, W. So that's pretty much all I have for symmetric cryptography. Now I'm going to hand it over back to Daniel so he can talk about the wonderful world of physical security.
Great job, Jeffrey. Brave of you to do math in front of everyone. That's pretty awesome. As a matter of fact, speaking of railfence, as I get everything queued up for the rest of my presentation, yeah, for real, right? Like went off without a hitch. A friend of mine designed a challenge for go see that, I assume. A friend of mine designed a railfence cipher for Sunshine, and that was the first time I got exposed to it. So if you do CTFs of any kind and you like crypto, that's a great place to exercise all those skills and to learn a bunch more too. All right, let me just finish getting this configured real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. If somebody wouldn't mind monitoring the chat to let me know if someone has a question or something. I'm just going to kind of like walk through these, and I'm assuming that I've got it configured right. Yeah, okay, cool, we're good. Awesome. So physical security. We're going to talk about the breaking. Come on, Zoom. Sorry, guys. This is not going well. There we go. Try this one more time. All right. So we're going to talk about physical security, which is basically the breaking and entering for legal fun and profit. That is if you ever get out of the hobby phase, which some of us get trapped in forever. Now, the slides that I'm going to be presenting, and essentially like all the stuff that I'm talking to you about today, is going to be coming to you directly from one of our previous members. I'm not sure if they are alumni yet or if they're still hanging out. I haven't seen them in a while. They're Levi, or at one point they went by Leviathan. If they're out there, feel free to hit me up and let me know what you thought about my presentation of essentially all the work you put in. They are so much more knowledgeable at physical security than I will probably ever be, and I kind of look up to them. So hope you all enjoy it. Anyway, so non-destructive entry is kind of like the basis of everything that you want to focus on when you're talking about physical security, especially when you're talking about doing physical security testing, right? Because just about anybody can show up with a sledgehammer or with dynamite and open a door, right? That's not particularly difficult. But someone that's able to show up to a random location with only all of their previous research and their recon and enter in, get whatever information they need, and get into all the areas that they're not supposed to get into, and then exfil all of that data and or equipment without getting caught is that's a true skill. So there are two typical ways when it comes to a locked door and or system that you are going to hit with physical security, and you're either going to pick it or you're going to bypass it. So the great thing about picking is you can have a small set of tools and they're going to work on most locks. Now, there's some weird ones out there, and we're going to get into it a little bit at the end of this demonstration. And if we are so blessed as to end up back in real life, once again, when we meet up, we have a full lockpicking toolkit, and you are more than welcome to show up and learn all about physical security and picking locks and doing all that fun stuff. So another great thing about picking is that it's subtle. One of the big downsides is it's very time intensive. Even if you are really knowledgeable about that particular lock, as simple as just repinning that lock with some security pins could throw in an additional 5 minutes on your pick time or prevent you from being able to make entry on that door altogether. There are just very slight modifications that can throw you through a loop, and sometimes even on locks that you know really, really well. If you're having a bad day, you can just spend 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes trying to pop that lock. And if you're on location trying to do that, that's more than enough time for a security guard or just someone who is staying late working to round that corner and discover you and bust you, essentially. It also requires an incredible amount of practice. The majority of all of picking skills comes from feeling the lock, being able to know like what tension to apply and when to apply it, what picks to use, when it's appropriate to rake and or when it's appropriate to use a single pick is a lot of experience-based skill that you can't really just like read a book on and then go apply. You have to practice that. Bypass, however, you have single-purpose tools. They're built to do exactly what you need them to do. They are less subtle, and when you deploy them, when you pull them out, we're going to get into a couple of them a little later on, they are going to be very obvious that you're not getting into that door the way that you're supposed to. If you are particularly skilled, you can pick a lock and make it look like you've just got a really jank key, but with like a crash bar bypass tool, there's no way that you're going to get away with that if someone rounds the corner and sees you. They are fast, and very little practice is required because once you know how to deploy it, it's very easy to just like continue to deploy that same tool again. So what we're going to cover right now, because we are all college students, and because I can't expect you to go out there and spend $100 to $500 on really ritzy bypass tools, we're going to assume that you have access to Walmart and about $30. So everything that you see on the screen right now, you can purchase for around $30 from a given Walmart, with the exception of the lockpicks, of course. And that will allow you to essentially defeat a majority of all the different physical devices that we're going to cover today. As a side note, even though it's not included in the $30 like price tag, you should try to acquire a really robust multi-tool and keep that on you at all times. And that's just like good practice, no matter what you do. It's always better to have the ability to use a tool, and carrying a multi-tool is just a really easy thing. You can keep it in your backpack, in your car. If you like carry a purse, you can keep it in there. It can solve a lot of situations that you find yourself in, and you know, it doesn't take up much space. So the simplest tool we got here is the Crowbar. It's also the tool that you should be using the least amount of time if you're doing things legitimately, at least. So it's quick and it's highly effective. The problem is it is definitely not in the suite of non-destructive tools. There are a couple applications that you can use this in, which you can bypass and or jimmy a lock or a door or some other security mechanism without doing damage to it or leaving a mark behind, but you're gonna have to be really careful, and it kind of defeats the purpose of the tool. This is for your quick and dirty entry when you're allowed to like move fast and break things. It works by forcing a latch off a door jamb, which essentially like basically pries the door open and defeats the locking mechanism. Once again, not advised except for exceedingly rare situations. The hanger that was mentioned earlier and shown is actually used in two tools. You can use it as an improvised shove-it. And if you see here pictured in the center of your screen is a shove-it entry tool. And what that basically does is you use the hooked end of it to reach behind the fingers of the door latch and just pull back on them to defeat the way that they lock up with the jamb. It only works on doors with hinges facing outwards. So in a commercial environment, those are going to be the majority of all the doors you like interact with because of how fire code is written, which is usually to like the physical pen tester's benefit. All doors have to open into the entryway. So almost all of those hinges are going to have pins facing you, which means that you are going to be able to exploit this in that way. The other one that you can use a hanger for is the underdoor tool, which while this will work in many situations, this is incredibly improvised. And this would be one of the first tools that I recommend if you are getting into this kind of thing and you want to practice, that you actually invest a little bit of money in, because a little bit of money does go a really, really long way here. We'll get into like how it is that that's employed a little bit later on in the slides. This is a good example. I've actually got a better diagram a little bit later on. So the underdoor tool works on lever handle doors, and there are all kinds of different doors with all kinds of different handle setup. This one works off of everything that kind of like pivots down. So what you essentially do is you fish that entry tool up underneath the bottom jamb of the door, and then you kind of rotate it up. You try to catch that door handle, and as soon as you do, you use the other side to pull down and tension it. And then you're just going to increase tension until you can just get it to like rotate down far enough to click past that door. You're going to apply pressure on the other side, and you're going to push that door open and defeat the locking mechanism. I'm sure that everyone has seen these go on sale or clearance at Walmart, like right after holiday season. You can pick these up for like $1 or like a couple of dollars, maybe if you get like a really high quality one. But basically what you're going to do with this is you're going to defeat the locking mechanism by reaching through the center seam of the door, not by where the latches interact with each other, but in between the little, usually it's like little synthetic feathers, or maybe like a rubber jam. Just slide that through there, come down to the crash bar, which is the centerpiece. It's also called a panic bar. And then you're going to just like apply pressure, and you're going to pull back, and it's going to disengage the locking mechanism. This is another great instance of fire code working to the pen tester's physical pen tester's benefit, because that is fire code in just about every where that you're ever going to need to make entry on a thing. That's because if there is a fire in a building, everyone has to be able to evacuate as quickly as possible. And the biggest concern is that people are going to get stacked up on that door, and they're not going to be able to like open it. So by keeping a panic bar in place, that is going to depress on pressure and then unlock the door. And that will work even if the door is like in an after hours configuration. Even if that has an electronic lock, that is required that it always be operable. And we'll see a different kind of exploit on something like that a little bit further on. I'm also going to say that this most certainly will not ever work on any set of doors on campus, and that you have all signed an ethics form, or you should have signed an ethics form. So don't do illegal things and don't work on things that you don't have permission to unless you own them. The can that you saw pictured, that T monster, is super useful. With a little bit of practice, and if you are so interested, I can walk you through the diagrams and how to do this out like on the Discord or whatever. But basically, you take a tin can, aluminum can, you cut it up, and you are going to fold it over. You're going to make a shim, and what that shim is going to do is it's going to slide down on the inside of the locking mechanism, and it's going to defeat the like ball bearing that usually slides into the slot on most padlocks and combination locks. And what that's going to do is you're just going to rotate it out of the way. Most of them are not built in such a way as to be defended against this, or to have a locking mechanism for that that ball bearing. So they're just going to slide out of the way. And once that happens, you just pop that lock. Super easy. Padlocks, combo locks, they come on like in all sorts of cases. They lock up cabinets, computer cases, doors, sometimes gates. Sometimes you can even like not need like bolt cutters or something, and you can just like use this to bypass what is securing a chain link fence shut. So super, super useful to have in the back of the brain space. Key copying. So this is a little bit more advanced. I would say you really do need to understand how it is that locks operate to get the most out of this tool. But effectively, everyone is walking around with a phone. If you can snap a picture of a key and you can get the bidding on that key, you can copy that really, really easily. As a matter of fact, I think Deviant Olam, which is an individual we'll talk about a little bit later on, has a fantastic talk at DEF CON. I think it was like DEF CON 23 or maybe DEF CON 27, where he goes into talking about like master key systems, and how effectively, if you can get a copy of any key that exists in a master keyed system, you can eventually work that key back with time and patience, of course, and a lot of key blanks. You can work that key back to a master key, and then essentially like you have access to every single door that that key would interact with. Now, in most cases, you don't have the kind of time to deploy that on a physical penetration test. But if you do, it's a fantastic way to just like basically have keys to the kingdom, like literally. What you're going to do here is you're going to take your copy or your picture, and you're going to try to match that up to a key blank, right? So you need a photo of the bidding, or you need to copy the bidding by running a pen over it. And if you do a photo, you're going to need to get the same proportions, right? So you're going to have to work with that a little bit. And then what you're going to do is you can take a piece of like that same leftover can that you had. You can trace onto it the cutout that you make on like a piece of paper or tracing paper or something like that. And once you do that, you're just going to insert that into the lock. You're going to lift it up and with a tension wrench. And then you're just going to like slowly apply pressure, wiggle it back and forth until it gets exactly the right fit, and it'll pop that lock. If you wanted to take this a step further, you could actually figure out what key blank is used for those types of locks. And then with your copy, you just sit there and with a file slowly mill down that key blank until it fits. And that will be essentially the exact same as having a copy of that key. Picking, this is like we talked a little bit earlier. Picking is a necessity. It's only ever going to be practical for you to employ when like it's a completely deserted environment. Like it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, no one's in the building, there's no night security, you're showing up on prem and you've got as much time as you need. There are two like styles to picking locks. You can single pin pick, which is what I highly recommend for beginners to get the feel for it. And then after you really understand how locks work and you get like that good feel for like, when releases and like all the different pressure, you can then switch over and start working on raking locks so that you can bust that same lockout open in like a fraction of the time. Once again, this is not something to be relied upon as being quick or easy. You can have practiced that exact same lock a million times, show up on site, try it. And because it's a lock that hasn't been abused, maybe it's only been around for a couple of years, or maybe it's a brand new install, you don't know. The feel of the lock is going to be completely foreign. And if it's newer, it's going to be better. Well, in some cases, and in some cases worse. It's definitely like one of those things you want to save until like you have no other opportunities. So bypass first. If you can't bypass, pick it. We'll go into this a little bit more later on. So we're going to go over a quick scenario, and I'm going to propose some questions and some thoughts to the audience. If anyone feels so bold as to speak up, throw out some ideas, I'd love to hear you. We can riff off this a little bit and have some fun with it. Cool. So let's say that you're given a scenario, right? You've been hired by a pen testing firm, right? And you're going to perform physical security for a small branch office in a nationwide utility company. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but utility companies love to be audited because of a variety of reasons, particularly involving the federal government. They really want to be secure, and most of them are not very secure. If you're interested on this topic, there's a fantastic interview and whole story in the Darknet Diaries, and I can get that specific one for you if you care to hear it. In this scenario, you're going to perform an audit, and you're going to attempt to gain access to as many high-value secure devices and areas as possible. So how would you breach security, right? Like if anyone's out there in the audience and wants to participate, what do you think the best way in? I've given you 4 injects here, and I'd love to hear if anyone has any thoughts on it.
Zamir recommends breaching the perimeter, while Ryan recommends tailgating.
Okay, awesome. So Zamir, breaching the perimeter, how would you go about doing that?
He recommends to cut the fence.
Cut the fence, great option. What would you do in the case that your the outline of your pen test contract doesn't allow you to do destructive testing?
While digging under the fence.
That's fantastic. In most cases, even when non-destructive testing is required, digging is allowed. Employing a shovel and moving some dirt around is a completely legitimate operation. And like very, very like good point. You can move earth out of your way, get right underneath the fence. In most cases, even like really well-built security fences don't go below ground. So, you move maybe like 1.5 feet of earth around, and you can get yourself a backpack and maybe a couple other people in, zero problem. And that's a great point of entry. Jeffrey, there was another recommendation that was tailgating.
Correct.
And who gave that one?
Ryan.
Ryan. All right, Ryan. So we're going to tailgate in. How would you go about tailgating into a facility?
Popular option is to walk with your hands full.
Good one, right? You want to exploit that I feel bad for you because you're under duress situation, right? A lot of physical security is built on making use of social engineering and making use on the idea that like most people are good people and they'll want to help you out. I'm sure that everyone else has experienced this in one way or another. You are walking into a building and someone holds the door open for you, right? And you just walk right in. Now that might not be a secured facility, but the same kind of thing applies. Most people, even when they're explicitly told that it's single entry only, that everyone has to scan in, they won't follow that security policy because when their morals come in conflict with some random person's idea on how doors should be operated. They just say, well, this is what I want to do, not what I should do. Exactly the same thing with like gate systems on most secured facilities. And you could test this out with just about any like apartment complex, right? If you're up on the tailgate of an individual that's opening a gate for you, right, going into a gated community, more often than not, they're not going to wait an extended period of time to run that gate opening timeout for it to be forced single entry or to force you to be unable to clear that gate in time. They're going to go on through and then you're going to sail right on by, even when it's marked specifically that it is for single cars only and damage may occur. More often than not, due to insurance reasons, you can still follow right behind and not have any issue. Those gates tend to have like safety mechanisms in place to not close if it detects something in the middle. So that's something you can definitely exploit. Good job to both of you, Zamir and Ryan. I appreciate the help. But let's continue on with the slides. So like Ryan said, we're going to go over tailgating. You want to exploit politeness for physical access, right? So someone who is authorized is going to show up to that door, and maybe you're on your cell phone. Maybe you've been like waiting for someone to show up and you're going to like come around a corner carrying a bunch of boxes or seem that you're like overloaded. You're going to dress the part and you're going to put on this notion that like, oh, you're really a good person and you're supposed to have access to this location and they want to help you, right? So they swipe and you follow them in. And if you're lucky enough, maybe they even hold the door open for you. And then that gives you entrance in. Now, where you go from there, that's a whole other thing. This leads us into pretexting. And this is probably like one of the more difficult ones to get experience doing. I can't give you many recommendations on it, but there are a lot of guides out there on the internet, and I'll provide you some resources at the end of this talk. Pretexting is high visibility, invisibility. You are going to be that person that no one wants to interact with. You want to be the person performing construction, right? Or the individual that is there to do the hard job, like plumbing or some kind of construction work. You want to show up looking as official as possible, maybe carrying a clipboard. You want to look that you're in as much of a hurry as possible and that you can't be bothered and that you're just very frustrated. People will more often than not just leave you alone and let you do whatever it is that you are there to do. They trust the notion that if you show up in uniform, you're there for a reason. So if you're trying to perform something like this, and once again, there are much better resources out there than me, you want to dress the part. If you can, you want to call ahead to the location. You want to let them know that you're coming in. You want to give them a believable but fake name. And you want to act like you belong there when you show up. If you can get the secretary's number or the receptionist number for like the office or whatever locations that you're showing up to, you call ahead and you let them know, hey, look, I'm so-and-so with X company, which is all just, a fabrication. It's part of the story. I'm so-and-so with such and such. I'm going to be showing up tomorrow at X time to handle your blah, 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 whatever reason you can construct that would be believable for that specific situation to convince them that you are as legitimate as you possibly can be. And then you show up at the appointed time in the uniform that they would expect you to be wearing to do that task. And then you walk up to that person that you've got the like name and contact details for, and you say, hi, I spoke to you on the phone the other day. I'm here to do like X, Y, and Z. Can you point me in the right direction? And more often than not, they will do everything they can to make your life easier. In some cases, even pretending to be from an office that is a like parent company or another branch office for that location, and then just saying like, hey, I'm from this office, I'm here to do this kind of training, or I'm here to like meet with these individuals to talk about X, Y, and Z. I need badging and like this, that, and the other. Spoof an email, and more often than not, you can like get right in. Even better if you can spoof a phone number. You want to be believable enough, and it's remarkable how low that bar usually is. But once you get on prem, the most important thing is act like you belong. once you're on premises and you're trying to get into places that you know that you're not supposed to have access to, because they're not going to let you just like walk into the data center or get into that locked server room or get into the CEO's office unless you're really good at lying. You are going to want to bypass the lock to open the door. Use under door tools, crash bars, or you can exploit some request enter sensors. And I'm going to show you a little video real quick. Hopefully this doesn't load up an ad. This is by Deviant Olem, and I hope you all enjoy. He's just saying that it's locked here. Isn't that marvelous? So I'm sure many of you are wondering how exactly that works. To go into it really briefly, once again, that was exploiting fire code. And what he did was he walked up to the seam of the edges of the doors and he blew through it a mist of what appeared to be water. And that mist was detected by the IR sensor on the other side of the door. And that cloud essentially like looked close enough to a human body that it fooled the sensor into saying, there's someone here and I have to unlock to let them out. And as soon as it did, he just popped the door right open. In most cases, that exact same situation is employed in many locations. And speaking of physical security and ways to prevent against that is a completely different talk. We can talk about that in Discord or at another time. But that is very, very common. You will see that employed all over the place, particularly like anywhere that is commercial property close to a downtown area. You will see that like 9 times out of 10. All right, once again, we come back to picking. If all else fails, if you've done every single thing you can possibly try, if you have employed every bypass tool you can imagine, you've used every tool in your toolkit and you just can't get to where you need to go, pick it. What you have to lose at this point, right? It's going to be, once again, the slowest entry method. You need lots of practice. There are all kinds of things that are going to defeat you. And there are a bunch of different locks out there that you're going to have to learn. But this is one of those things you're just going to have to get practice with. And honestly, it's just a lot of fun to do anyway. So once you get on-prem, right, you want to deploy some kind of object that interfaces with the electronic devices that you're concerned about, right? Because we're not just doing pen testing on bank vaults. We're probably doing pen testing on data centers, and we're doing pen testing on corporate headquarters, or we're doing pen testing, like in the example given before, on the Inject, a utilities company, right? So I've listed some devices out here, and we're going to talk about them briefly, but I'm going to turn this back over to the audience. Let's say that you're on-prem, you've broken perimeter, and you're now inside the building, right? You have access, you've gotten past the nighttime security guards, and you have a little bit of leeway, right? What are you going to target, and how are you going to exploit it? I'll give you all a couple of minutes to throw up ideas in chat.
Troisi recommends the Evil Twin access point.
Evil Twin is a fantastic deployment mechanism. What would you do with the Evil Twin access point?
Michael would get Wi-Fi credentials and then have someone log into it.
Yeah, that's perfect, right? You can skim those Wi-Fi credentials right off the top, and then boom, you've got a pivot. Also, more often than not, and I'm sure that a lot of people know this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Most devices do not do a lot of hard authentication when scanning SSIDs. So if you're able to spoof an SSID on-prem, cell phones that are connected to like a guest Wi-Fi or like a employees only Wi-Fi system are going to try to authenticate to that directly. Even if you don't have a password, it's just going to like pull for that name and directly connect to it. A lot of older devices and or built-in embedded devices don't have a lot of security like protecting them from that kind of a thing too. So that is an easy in for like Internet of Things devices, particularly in a lot of like more modern business environments. You may have something as silly as a TV that's connected to Wi-Fi, or perhaps a teapot or a coffee maker. Wild things out there. And it might seem silly, but most of those devices are running Linux at some level. So if you can get credentials to that, or you can get a way into the network from there, even if you're only able to be on-prem for a very short amount of time, 5, 10, 15 minutes, you can drop a evil twin access point. That's a fantastic way to give you just a little bit of a pivot in network that you might not otherwise have access to. So good job, Michael. That's a fantastic idea. Anyone else in the chat have an idea how you can exploit the network?
Larry recommends using a rubber ducky.
Rubber ducky, fantastic as well. Release the Quacken. So rubber ducky is great if you can get access to an employee's computer, or a just like if you were to get into the server itself and you needed to drop for whatever reason, like persistent access, and you could get access to that Wi-Fi device later on, or cell device, I guess, if you're so inclined. That's a fantastic way to do remote code without really having to worry about installing software, getting that like malware evasion, having to bypass a whole bunch of like different endpoint protection mechanisms. If you can get like USB access on something and it's unprotected, awesome. Like that is just like one of the best ways, because you own that host, and that host is at your disposal for so many other things. What would you do if you were on-prem and you deployed that rubber ducky, right? What would be your way into the network? I'm going to assume that they're typing up a really great response, and I'm going to kind of fill the space real quick, a little bit, cover the other ones that haven't been mentioned yet, and then if I haven't heard back, we'll just move on. Rubber ducky is a great device to deploy. Evil twin access point is a great device to deploy. The next up would be a keylogger. Whether this is a device in hardware deployment or a software deployment, if you're so lucky, just being able to like read everything that a user is typing, particularly a user that's not security focused, you can get an untold amount of data, not just like passwords, not just like usernames, but all kinds of company information, very like specific, like personal information that can be exploited and leveraged in a bunch of different ways. Keylogger is fantastic. I threw up the meme right here because like I think we've all kind of maybe been in a situation similar where someone's like, you know, hey, I want your password. Well, don't do that, and be very careful about like letting people deploy software on your system, because you know if they can see what you're typing, they can see what you're typing. And that's pretty scary stuff. So the last one is Dropbox, and this is actually something that would make a great workshop if we ever had the time and availability to do it. But a Dropbox is basically a miniature computer. They do them with Pis and a bunch of other like very specific hardware. You basically connect this in to a network over either Wi-Fi or Ethernet. You give it a little bit of power, and it's essentially your evil little device on their network exploiting all the things. These tend to be particularly difficult to find if you're really good at hiding them. You can hide them up in ceiling tiles. You can hide them underneath racks. The messier the environment, the better, because you just throw this in there and it looks like another piece of equipment that's supposed to be there, and no one's going to touch it unless they know what's there. And that's essentially like a perfect like pivot into a network. if you can get an Ethernet connection and you've got a Dropbox that's set up with a cell antenna, you can get 4G connectivity into that from like all the way across the nation. And you can be exploiting, or you can have someone that is like at a terminal exploiting while you're doing the rest of your like physical security deployment and like breaking all the things. And then you have persistence later on. And the best part about these is that you can get these, you can build these pretty cheap. You can spend probably like less than $50 and get a pretty decent and reliable Dropbox that you can essentially throw away in most cases. And at the end of the day, when your penetration test is done and over with, you come back and you collect everything that you left behind, so you get to reuse it, assuming that like everything goes well, right? Jeffrey, do we have any other comments?
Unfortunately, we do not.
That's okay. We'll roll on to the next part. So what can they do? And we covered this a little bit in the last slide. So Rubber Ducky injects keystrokes and or leverages direct software. Evil Twin access point, man in the middle. Like once you can intercept traffic, you can do a lot of things with that. You can get access to the real network, or you can just like sit there and watch everything that comes across it. Keylogger, it intercepts keystrokes. So you can sit there and just read everything that's going on, which is, it does not seem that valuable, but it really is very useful. And a Dropbox is a network backdoor. Once you have a backdoor into a network, what are they really going to do to stop you? If you can evade network detection, you're there as long as you want to be. And there's a lot of damage you can do. So we had talked about perimeter breaching a little bit earlier on. And we had a couple of these that were thrown out. So we had vehicle access, as I think I remember Ryan saying that we did a tailgate in. There's also a stowaway method on that, whereas basically you hide in a vehicle and you just try to remain hidden until the end of the day when they return that service vehicle back. You wait until after hours and then you get out and then go do all your PhysSec stuff. And in a lot of locations and a lot of like security implementations, there's not going to be a crawl through the vehicle in every single way. If you can hide effectively and get behind the wire, that allows you to pivot in a number of different ways. And in some cases, even getting in that way is enough to justify the physical penetration test altogether. Digging is allowed. I believe it was Zamir had talked about that a little bit, which is a fantastic recommendation. Good idea there. We've also got bolt cutters. This is going to be destructive entry as well. And at least as far as I am aware, I couldn't think of a way in which this would be NDE. But if need be, and you have the perms to do it, there's nothing that's stopping you from like cutting your way through a chain link fence and getting in. Particularly like if they're not going to like discover it, and or like maybe you have to pay remuneration, or you have to pay back the cost of anything that you break. A chain link fence is not that expensive to have to like lose out a little bit of money on. Rugs is kind of useful, kind of not in some cases. Basically, as far as I'm aware, the idea here is that you enter into an upper scale office and they may have a rug that goes underneath the door, and that door may be configured in such a way as it's very difficult to get something up underneath of the ledge, like the bottom sill, as it were, and to exploit the other side of that door. But if there's a rug in place, it's very simple. You go underneath the rug, then you pull the rug out from underneath of it, and then you exploit from there. So always be using your environment against your attack. And climbing. This is really important, because more often than not, the higher you go, the less secure a building is. If you can get up onto the roof of a building, more often than not, that roof access door is either not going to be locked, or it was locked at one point and someone has put a door stopper on it, or put something in between the locking mechanism, like to prevent it from shutting altogether, or it's just degraded to the point where you can pull on it and it's going to pop right open. So if all else fails and you can't get in and you really don't want to start picking locks on an exterior door that you know you're going to get caught, try to find a gutter that would support your weight getting up, or try to leverage a way in which to get to a sill and just spider monkey your way up the side of the building. I know it sounds like silly, but in a lot of cases, once again, fire code, if you are going to have a building that is like 2 stories or more, you're going to have a second escape. So if a elevator gets cut off or a stairwell emergency exit gets cut off, you have to be able to exit it in some way, shape, or form. And that usually leads you to a side of the building fire escape. And that might be, 10, 20 feet in the air. But if you can get access to that and you can exploit that and just walk your way under the roof, then, that's a pretty easy way in. So you may be concerned about cameras. And this is a valid concern, especially like the way that technology has changed and how the price on these very, very high definition cameras has come down is that's something you really want to be worried about. But in most cases, these systems are just there essentially to deter people that would be trying to break into a location. If you were to look at this screen right here and you were to say, oh, I've got these 16 cameras. Sure, looking at a picture, you can easily identify what's going on in the scene. But now imagine that all 16 of those cameras are live and you've been staring at them for 6 hours, 5 hours. How attentive are you going to be? Remember too, that you're probably going to have to do rounds at one point. You've probably been doing this job for weeks, months, years. This is not the kind of thing that you're going to be spending a lot of time looking at. More often than not, this is basically just to scare you off because it looks scary. If you get seen on a camera, well, you got seen on a camera, but they stick out enough, you should be able to avoid them in the first place. Very seldom are they hidden really, really well. And more often than not, even when they are deployed in as appropriate a way as possible, they still have blind spots, right? So you can definitely, with a little bit of practice and a lot of experimentation, you can find ways to get around like video cameras, even incredibly high quality ones. Besides that, if you really just wanted to brute force your way in, most cameras, like almost every camera, with very few exception, they do not have an infrared filter on the lens. Particularly like if they are daytime, nighttime cameras, they can't. So they essentially like see at night as clear as they do because they have infrared LEDs that broadcast what is visible to the camera onto the scene so that it can illuminate and see all the detail. That works great, but it also works against the camera too, because if you shine a bright enough infrared LED or like any light source at the camera, it's just going to see what is effectively like white light. And now there on Amazon, there are plenty of like sunglass style devices that you can wear that broadcast a whole bunch of infrared light back into a camera. So you can walk around and like never have your face seen. Even if you are detected, they can't prove that it's you. So that's something to keep in mind if that is the mechanism you have to deploy to get to the site or to get through that security measure. All right, so finally we've come to resources. We're getting closer to the end, guys. So the MIT Guide to Lockpicking is a fantastic resource, and I'm gonna talk through each of these so that it's up on the video long enough where you could type it in if you needed to, or just like do a little Google search. Fantastic document, goes through great diagrams, really good information. Like very, very, very much recommended that you take a look at it. The link that's provided here has a PDF available for download, and you can do that, or you can just do a Google search for MIT Guide to Lockpicking, and you'll find a lot of other access to it. Sparrow's Lockpicks, sorry, is a great company. I own several of their tools. Our lockpick kit for the club has several of their tools. They make a great product. I can't recommend them enough. Everything comes packaged beautifully. Shipping is great. Customer service is pretty good. And the quality of the tool is, I mean, for a lockpick, it's a lockpick. But if you are getting something that's a little bit more more specific. Let's say like you're getting like a training kit for picking, right? So you're getting a cutaway lock that has security pins in it, right? Those security pins are going to be made by this company, and they're going to be made to a very high quality. So I very much recommend, if you're going to spend money with them. If you're one of those people that does that whole Reddit thing, r/PhysSec is a great place to hang out and read up on everyone else's stories. It has gone back for like several years, so you've got plenty to read through. Burglar's Guide to the City is a book, which is also recommended. If you like to read, that's definitely something that you should spend your time with. And finally, Lockpicking Lawyer on YouTube, also on Insta and Twitter. If you have the time, or you just want something going in the background, Lockpicking Lawyer has great personality. Really a fan of them as a YouTuber, and their content is just like top notch. They go through every kind of like lock you can imagine. They like get down into the weeds sometimes, and they even have like users send in their homemade locks and challenges to like be picked. So I've only seen them fail at picking a couple of times. So great place to learn. You really should check them out. All right, so this is kind of like from me to you, right? Don't pick a lock you don't own, ever. If you are going to pick a lock you don't own, get permission, and preferably written permission. This is not something to mess around with. Like, you're essentially like legitimately breaking the law. You will go to jail and you will have a bad day. So don't play around with this. Also, don't ever pick a lock you depend on. Don't, like, no matter how excited you are to get into the sport and or hobby of it, don't pick your front door lock. Don't pick your deadbolt. That's something that you rely on that someone else isn't going to pick. And even though it doesn't seem like it, picking isn't destructive as a method of entry, but every single time you pick a lock, you do slowly damage the lock mechanism. You've essentially gotten brass on steel, and that wears down pretty quickly. So, and even worse, if you rake a lock, just go out of your way, buy locks, play with those, play with toys. Don't play with like what it is you actually like depend on for safety. And additionally, I'm going to say this like one more time. Don't abuse any knowledge that you gain, right? Whether it's here with our club, or it's on the internet elsewhere, places we pointed you to, or that you discover on your own, right? Knowledge is a great thing, and knowing how to do something is not necessarily breaking the law or evil, but deploying those in such a way that you could put others at harm or at risk of harm is not a good idea, right? So just try to observe common sense as much as possible. If it doesn't seem like something that everyone else would be doing, maybe think twice about it. Additionally, if it isn't ethical, it is never going to be ethical, right? Like, if you have to question it, you probably should be doing it. And finally, follow regulations and laws where applicable. There are going to be very few situations you're going to run into where there isn't something that's pretty well defined in this kind of thing. Physical security has been around for like ever. Like, you can go back to like the dawn of human civilization, and there's something that has to do about keeping somebody out from something. So like, just read up, get knowledgeable, do your best, and don't do bad things. Real quick, lockpicking legality by state. This is just like infographic. This is where it is that you can like legally carry lockpicks. I think this is up to date as of 2019 or 2020. Really, if you're in Tennessee, don't have lockpicks, and don't travel through Tennessee with lockpicks unless you are willing to take your own, yeah, just avoid it, or you're taking risk. Nevada, Mississippi, Virginia, and Ohio, they're legal to possess and to deploy, obviously if you're deploying them illegally, but be aware that there are some occurrences with local law enforcement that make that kind of a little weird. There are a couple of states, and they're kind of difficult to see here, but it looks like it's North Dakota, Indiana, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Arkansas that are kind of like, they're legal, but they're legal because there's no statute that like protects them. So also kind of like, if that's where you are, or that's where you like go, just proceed with caution. And everywhere else is essentially like legal by statute. You can possess them, you can use them, so long as what you're doing is legal to begin with. So keep that in mind. This is a quick demonstration of how exactly a lock works in a cutaway. I'm always fascinated by how many people don't know how a lock actually like operates. So I'm going to let this play through one more time just so everyone sees like how the pins and the tumblers go together. And if we end up back in person in the fall and you are so inclined, you're more than welcome to show up at the Cyber Lab and we will walk you through lock picking all day long. These are a couple of different styles of lock picks and locks. What we've got in the top left corner is a Chicago lock, also a tubular lock. And what that is you've got the pins that face towards the tool. The black handle tool you see there essentially lets you index all the pins and make your own key for every single lock. And then you can reset it and deploy it to another lock. You see these things on like cabinets and cases in a bunch of different places. They're not easy to pick a single pin, but once you get one of those tools and you get a good handle for it, they're either really, really easy or impossible. So always a fun thing. We do not actually have this tool or those locks to play with, and it would be something that I'd really like to expand our tool collection into. In the bottom left, you'll see a standard set of picks for a standard pin and tumbler lock. In the far bottom right, you'll see a set of combs. And combs are for warded locks. And we also do not have any of these. Once again, something I'd like to expand out into, but we just haven't had a lot of push in that direction. What these are for is essentially you reach into a lock and you press all the pins at the same time, so far out that you actually are pushing the pins to the other side of the cylinder, and then you just rotate the cylinder with all the pins captured. There are a couple of locks that you can exploit this on really, really easily, and they are kind of getting more rare, but used to be really, really common, just like really poor built locks. Next, you'll see on the left side some automotive rakes, and on the right hand side you'll see some wafer locks. Wafer pins, or wafers as they are usually used in automotive applications. That's where you're going to see them a lot of times. You also see them sometimes in filing cabinets. Usually in filing cabinets, there's only like 3 wafers, but in a lot of automotive applications, you'll see there at least 6, if not 10 or 15. So you use the black handle tools there to rake the wafers into place, and the silver tool sitting above it is the tension wrench. You essentially just like stick that into the lock, you apply tension, and then you rake the lock until the wafers all fall into place, and you just trial and error. Next, we've got dimple locks. So right there in the center, that lock's kind of uncommon. You don't see a whole lot of them here in the States, but sometimes for bike locks or for high security locks, you'll see them. And what that is it's essentially your typical standard lock, but instead of it having one row of pins with bidding on a key that's linear, you'll have multiple dimples that are set up at essentially the same, like very, very close tolerance, like height profiles. And there's not a lot of movement of those dimples. So down in the bottom left corner, you'll see the picks for that. We do have a set of these, and we do have a dimple pin lock, I believe. If not, we should get one soon. And what these picks do is you essentially go in and you rotate the flag until you feel the dimple, and you just depress it down until you feel it click into place, and you hold it there with tension. And as you can see in this door lock in the center picture, that is, I believe, a 10-pin lock. There's a residential lock, so for like a front door. You see these a lot in Europe. And then in the bottom right, you have essentially the same thing as the single picks, but these are rakes. So you essentially insert this in a lock and you run it back and forth, and you hope that it bumps the pins into location. That is all I've got. If anyone has questions that they want to ask, feel free to drop in chat, and Jeffrey will let me know. I'm going to turn it back over to Michael, and we can wrap up.
All right, we'll get an extra minute or two for questions. But until then, we'll prepare the closing out. So thank you everyone for showing up to our Friday meeting. Quick reminders, CPTC submissions are still open until a bit into April. So if you're interested in that, please make sure you get that in. Again, officer nominations are also still open. So if you're interested in running for a position such as president, treasurer, vice president, and or secretary, please do check that out. Next week is going to be our last complete meeting of this semester. We're going to do a interactive game night and have a little fun with that. And then the following meeting is going to be a short one, just to host some elections. So stay tuned for that.